Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our May 5th it's a work session. Roll call, or please turn off your cell phones and please excuse Councilman Luke Arbizo. Okay, and then we'll move on to item number 7, the executive session. Is that right, John? Okay. So pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 38430103, the city council may adjourn into executive work session and enter into open session to take action if needed.
Mayor, I move that we approve or that we adjourn into executive session.
Second.
All in favor? We're in executive session. executive session and reconvene back into our regular meeting. Item number 3 is a budget work session.
Mayor and Council, this is Troy Bingham, the Finance Director for the City of Safford. We've been asked tonight to be prepared for almost anything question-wise in the budget. In your packet, we have 3 slides, simply what was in the general fund, year-over-year comparison with percentages, what was in our streets fund, what was in our enterprise fund, and what was in our internal service fund. So at that point, we have an 80-page packet that has the line item detail that you guys were been provided in the last 3 meetings. And we stand for any questions, and hopefully we can answer them tonight. If not, we'll come back to you with answers.
I have a whole list, so I don't know how you guys want to do this. Do you want me to just go through my list?
Yeah.
It is a work session, correct? So we don't have to go through the chair. It should be an open dialogue.
Okay. So my first question, we're cutting the Pride of Safford in half. Any explanation of why? We're trying to get community involvement, but we're cutting it in half.
Pride of Safford, where, in what budget? Is that the city council budget?
It's going from 1,000 to 500.
And again, just speaking off the cuff, it may be that it hasn't been fully utilized lately, and so they based it on trend analysis maybe. And again, I don't know, I'm just guessing that, because that's kind of a unique item.
And that makes sense because, and I don't know who the current liaison is, but
It was,
who?
it was Mike.
It was I was going to say, I don't know that I've seen a lot of Pride of Safford awards given recently.
So that may be why.
They're- I took it, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a fight to get it going. I keep asking
So
for
you may need
meetings.
more if
I'm
you
not-
get it,
Yeah,
if you get it going. But I'm sure that's why, because we had a pretty dry stretch of
yeah.
not,
I keep asking to get the meetings going, and I'm not getting anywhere.
You wish to have more funding on that line item?
Well, we may need it if we can get it going again. That's why I didn't know why we were cutting it. I think it just kind of got pushed off to the side, and no one really picked it up again.
Well, on a baseline, usually when we look at line items, one of the things we'll do at just as a fundamental level is we'll look at prior year expenditures. So if we find that things go unexpended, we'll adjust that line item to those prior year trends. Now, if the Pride of Safford hasn't been used a lot lately, that would be the reason they probably looked at the trend and reduced it. We can always restore it or put it at a different level. I don't know what the numbers are.
It was 1,000, now it's 500.
Okay.
Prior
so-
utilization we'll have to get you those numbers if you want to see that. That's probably what is based on. Prior utilization justified a lower budget.
Okay.
But if you want it to go higher, I mean, that's an easy change. We have,
You want it back to 1,000?
I'd just like to get the program going again, period.
Okay,
And
does
it's not
that
you're
mean
the liaison.
you're the liaison?
Mm-hmm.
I guess we could work with you on trying to get that started.
Do you have a list of the members? I was on it for a few years ago.
I have Emily's name, and then I've got Mick, and that's all I've got.
Maybe one who was very much involved in too, get a hold of Carl Vessels.
Okay.
He was very much involved in it. But when I was with him, like I say, a few years ago, they're having a hard time because people would submit letters to who they're going to recommend, and after a while, they just weren't coming in.
Mm.
So maybe a little shot in the arm would do it some good, though.
Get it moving
Yeah.
again.
Did you want more funding, or you want to just leave it there and see where we go as we move forward?
Leave it where it's at now until it gets moving forward again.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I just didn't know the reasoning for cutting.
It would have been a trend analysis. It probably wasn't being utilized, so it was reduced.
It's on page 11.
yeah, one of our goals this year was to try to reduce our budget for any extra contingencies and built-in backup budgets. That we're trying to slim the budget down so that we don't look like a $100 million organization when we only spend $72 million. So
Next question was City Council's IT went from $7,130, a 326% increase to $30,000. What changed?
So this is a good, unique perspective that you picked up on here. So we asked during our internal service funds, IT specifically, who were they billing? And we looked at their allocation of their cost, and they had an old methodology where everything was based on a laptop and tablets. And we know that a lot of people had cell phones that they're servicing and all that. So we had them go back and look at their allocation and their inventory of assets. And they started counting things like cell phones, tablets, laptops, and something else, radios, right? And iPads. So when we threw all that in the inventory, all of a sudden the shifting happened. And the council was one of those shifts that, yes, you went from $7,130 to $30,380. So there was a shift, but it is based on the true allocation of resources in the IT department based on their inventories. So we're trying to get that better spread, but about 65% of the IT budget goes to the general fund. And we don't know if that's really the right answer. I mean, it should be kind of, we're a bigger utility entity than we are a general fund entity. Our general fund budget is 19 million. Our utility budget is $55 million. So we were trying to get that allocation, but without putting our finger on it and swaying it. So we looked at that allocation of resources, and council was one of those that was affected by that. So good analysis that you picked up on there.
The police professional services, we have a $600,000 increase.
Professional services, so that would be, motor pool would be one of those things, but they had a decrease in their motor pool. Chief, do you want to speak to your
That was
professional
my
services
next question
increase?
too. If we're increasing our motor pool, why are we decreasing the amount we're holding?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I believe that's where our grants were moved, or excuse me, not our grants, our contracts for dispatch and animal control were moved into professional services. So hence the big increase there.
Okay, that's,
So there used to
that's
be
just
two
a shocker
individual
to see
lines.
an increase of 600,000. It's like, whoa.
Did that show, did that show some opioid contribution?
Not in the 600, that one was
That's
line
in
item
that's in a
lower.
different line item. It's the 67,270. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it was moved down into that operating supplies. That's where it was moved to.
Yeah, so I didn't know, why are we decreasing your enterprise? So we said if we had a vehicle that got
okay.
old, we were gonna continue to save, so why are we decreasing?
So the chief is an entity that only has small vehicles, meaning vehicles that I can rent from or lease from Kempton's. On the Kempton lease, we typically were going 5 or 6 years. We started off with Enterprise at 5 years. The first year of the Kempton was 6. We're going to try to push that to 7. So with us pushing the length of the vehicle, that was able to reduce the amount of contribution he needs to make into the fund, because we're only replacing his vehicle once every 7 years, not once every 5 or 6.
Okay.
So that's why he saw the biggest decrease in vehicle fees.
One of my questions was in the fire department, why do we have a vehicle commuting allowance?
There's a
One of the
vehicle.
line items that's there.
It was taken out as part of the fire chief negotiations.
It's still showing in today's packet as of $900.
Sorry, I gotta go find it in my long list of here.
Sorry, I didn't
Try to keep the
write
public-
page numbers.
Parks, golf. Streets. I'll get there eventually, I promise. Okay, I missed it. I don't know where it is in the packet. Do you know what page it was on the
No, I had
28? Thank you. 28, where's it? Look at that, fire. So you're saying you see it in the description?
it is up in the, under personnel salary subtotal, we have vehicle commuting allowance for 900.
Oh. Yeah, that just needs to be removed.
Okay.
It just is a holdover from the previous fire chief was receiving that.
Okay.
I haven't even noticed that. I didn't even know we
Oh.
called that out.
Why do you have some stuff in yellow?
So yellow means that those are object codes. This is where we're trying to simplify our chart of accounts. So anytime you see yellow, it just means that it's shifting. So like she noticed that police went up 600% in professional services. All it was is the yellow lines went up to professional services. Thus the shift was, they're not spending more. They're just moving money from one object code that the history was in, and now it's all happening in a separate object code. But that object code is universal across the whole entire city. 62-100 and 67-270 are the two biggest object codes that we use in the city now. So we got rid of all the detail they used to have in the line item detail, and we consolidated it down to the most simplified 19 object codes that we could to try to keep it as simple as possible moving forward.
Next question, it seems kind of redundant. So under fire for professional services, it says building repair and maintenance over in the notes, but then if you look down further in operating supplies, it was minor repairs to the fire station. To me, those are one and the same.
So, so the difference between the two object codes there. So professional services, when I have a contract for actual services, no physical commodity comes out of it. 67,270 is if they had to buy a physical outlet, they're going to use 67,270. But if you paid an electrician to just come in and analyze or evaluate, that's a service and there's no commodity being bought, that's 62,100. So they kind of split the budget to say, if I have to work on the building, it could be a plumber that comes out and just unclogs a drain, but it also could be a plumber comes out and puts in a brand new line for us, which would be a commodity and a service at the same time. So it's the work's being done possibly by the same entity. It's just being split across, is it a service or is it a commodity?
Okay.
That's the difference.
One of my questions already got answered. I did ask you, John, about recreation, if we were going to break out those totals, because we have, it mostly lists all the pool, but then we have a little tiny blurb in there about basketball, and we don't say anything about the volleyball. So I know we've got more than just pool in recreation, but we're not breaking it down.
Yes, did you want to address that? So yes, we've started to break them out from, we used to have them in donations, so now we move them into Ms. Embeck's budget.
Yes, so this year we have expanded our basketball league, and that happened after the budgetary amounts were set in July. Mr. Ragland retired, so the $6,000 that used to be a council donation went to the basketball program. Troy and I have worked on getting sports site software now, so everything that goes to the pool, basketball, volleyball, swim lessons, everything will be split out by category. And I did go through a spreadsheet today, so I have that. If you'd like to go over it, I can show you what is each entity's expenditures for this year.
Thank you.
You know what, why don't we just send that out to council as a whole?
So it gets in there.
Next question. We've talked about inmate labor. We have it as a line item. We've got it budgeted in there. I think it's 11,000, but we don't use the inmate labor. So is there some reason we're leaving it in there? Because I know Mr. Henry said he'd prefer not to use it, but it's still in there.
So is this the golf course you're referring to,
Mm,
under admin? Well, Mr. Henry, you want to come up and explain yourself?
I do prefer not to use them, but we are keeping that in there because if we have a project come up, for instance, you know, if we want to pay for the labor to do the paving at the airport, we are going to renew our IGA. We got a project where we can bring in a crew and pay for them. We got the budget to pay them, but it's just in there just for that purpose.
just in case.
Yep, it's
Okay.
not for daily use. It would just be a project oriented,
Okay.
hire them
But
on.
we need to renew the IGA first, correct? And that would be council?
Yes, it will come to council. In fact, I think Mr. Hoschel pulled that IGA as a result of an earlier conversation, and Mr. Henry had sent me an email, so I believe Mr. Hoschel's working on that right now.
43. Page 43.
Page 43, thank you. Sorry, I mean, 88
You
pages,
prize,
I
you
gotta
have
get
every page.
more accommodating to the 80.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to keep the public, I mean, if they watch this online,
I
those
tried to
three
go in
YouTubers, I
order,
want them to
but-
be fully informed of what we're talking about, so.
You never know. Okay,
Alright.
got that one. Sorry, moving on to golf course. I guess I should tell you where I'm going. I just went department by department. It says professional service we're increasing. Is that one of those things where you're just moving from one to the other? Or why is the golf course increasing professional services?
So professional services is where we pay Troon, is through that contract. So I believe the budget that you have in here is actually 2025. Troon just barely got us their budget actually last week. So we have not modified these sheets with what Troon has given us. This budget that we're going to introduce at our future meetings with you is very similar to what you're seeing tonight. It's going to be more broke out. We're going to talk about the management fee that we pay Troon, which is $45,000. Then we're going to talk about the capital needs that they have at the golf course. These things that are not large projects, they're just more like their vehicles and their lawnmowers. They spend a lot of money leasing vehicles that we really don't talk about. That's a major part of their losses there. And then there's the actual operations, which is the personnel that they pay for. They pay for, I think, 9 employees on their payroll to serve as both mowers to maintenance workers at the golf course. Those 3 things will be separated out on this new budget that we've come up with. And I think it's going to show that where we're actually losing money at the golf course, it's not in the operations. Operationally, I think we're breaking even. If you take out those leases that they're having to pay for out of their funds that they get from the city, that's where the losses are coming from. So if the city can do something a little bit different there, if we could maybe assist with low interest loans or tax exempt financing, we can possibly get them a little bit closer to break even to where operationally and capital lease wise they can break even, but capital projects is where they're not going to break even. But again, I guess I'm giving you an insight on a budget that you have yet to see, but it was just because Dominic was a little bit behind on getting us a budget on this, so we haven't really modified what you have right now in your packet. It's only changed, I think, by $100,000 it's going up, but ultimately revenues should match that. So we are changing the budget to try to reflect that as it comes through.
I think that one was answered. And then I just wanted more information on sanitation being negative. They're not. What are we doing to do that? What are we going to do to get them, because they're going to be negative this year, so what are we
So
doing?
there's a point that sanitation does have reserves, right? There's things over and above their 50% reserve requirement. So they do have fund balance. So they can go, an enterprise fund can go in the hole as long as it doesn't do it 3 years in a row. So we were planning on a small deficit. I think $113,000 is the total deficit for this year. Again, knowing that the rate study might correct that. No one has looked at sanitation fees since 2009 or 11. I can't remember the year, 9. It's been a long time. So we knew that there would be an adjustment in fees possibly through the rate study that would possibly negate that loss. But we wanted to budget expenditure wise so that they have capacity to do what they need to do and let the revenues fall where they were going to fall for this year. If it was going to be negative, it'd be the first year of a deficit. They have fund balance that could cover it for that first year. But if it was an ongoing deficit or we did not approve a rate change for that entity, then we would have to start talking about cutting back on that budget. But we were letting the budget be the budget for this year until that rate study came out completely. But it is the only fund that is currently in deficit.
And so if the rate study is not approved by council, they will stay in arrears?
They will, if you're not going to change the revenues, then the only thing you can do is change the expenditure pattern, right? And cut back on something. You could offer less services in an effort to not do a rate increase. There's a myriad of options, and you could do one of each or a little bit of each one of them, but revenues, cutting back on operations, or cutting back on capital projects. Those are the 3 things that you have as your triggers to pull as a council on how to keep a fund in balance. So,
And that's what makes them, go ahead.
I was just wondering, what was the revenue projection you had for sanitation? I thought there was closer to like a $300,000 deficit.
so what we were,
Current year operations.
I was only seeing 113, but I can go back and look at that a little closer. But
I
again,
just want to make sure we're looking
revenue
at that.
projections for sanitation are kind of just an estimate based on prior 5 years of activity. So it's hard to say. We don't really get new customers. There's 19 new homes built inside the city of Safford. So it's not growth. So really it's just changing in what people are actually using in sanitation. And there's not a lot of fees outside of residential dump canisters changing in size. So I have to go back and look, but I thought the loss was only 113 and they have a $500,000 fund balance that could cover that. So whatever the loss was, it was going to be a temporary 1-year loss that could be sustained by the fund. It was minimal at best for us. So,
And I think that this is really a good, instructive kind of canary in the coal mine moment, right? When we talk about the general fund, the revenues there are basically generated by the economy, right? They're just whatever the economy does, you project, and hopefully, based on those trends we talked about, you get the revenues that you need. What makes the enterprise funds unique is that you're trying to determine how much revenue you need based on your expenditure patterns. And so the reason that rate studies occur from time to time is that over time, those expenditure patterns will grow, like everything. And especially in the current market with inflation being what it was, and this particular fund needing trucks so badly, as those expenditure patterns grow, they begin to exceed sometimes, usually, the revenue stream's ability to cover it. Hence, you do a rate study, You go back in, you analyze your revenue or your expenditure patterns, you project them over 5 years, and then you try to come up with a revenue profile to meet that new level of service for the upcoming 5 years. So it's not unusual in the sense that you don't want your funds to go negative, but it is a sign that it's time to revisit what your revenue pattern is. And again, as the finance director said, you can also look at your expenditure patterns. And Councilwoman Flores brought up the idea of, hey, how are we funding the vehicles? Because those tend to drive that fund. So if we're cashing them out, we're paying cash, that may end up creating a larger deficit over time than, let's say, if we debt service them, so that expenditure level is lower and spread out over time. So there's options on how you can address that. Ultimately, you're going to have to do something with the rates.
Yeah, on the council packet for March 10th, you had ongoing revenues projected at 1,290,000,
Which would be $400,000 short.
right?
Right.
Which is a lot more than 100,000.
Yes. And it tells you that you really need to look at that fund, because it's, even the auditors will look at that for a year or two and say, fine, but you got to be pulling out of that. At some point, you got to go positive. It's required.
I just want to make sure when we look at that if staff can just provide options.
Yeah, we'll
And
give you
not
those.
just-
We'll give you the myriad of options. I mean, we probably have 4 or 5 that we can probably do for you.
Perfect. That sounds great.
But yeah, the most extreme being raise the revenue, and the least extreme being do nothing and see what happens.
That's all I had.
No, that's on the sanitation. So are you bringing back to us still the motor pool and the fleet plan as far as the vehicle rotation, the plans for that? Because I heard you earlier say that police now, their vehicles will be part of the,
So yeah, we just finished up our meetings with departments and on their various asks for both small and large vehicles. We have also priced out what it would look like for small vehicles this year at Kempton's. So we have a better pricing estimate. I think we have a $5 million budget in the fleet. We'd probably be looking closer to $8 million between the large vehicles and the small vehicles. But again, that is cash that you've already set aside from previous years. That's not an additional rate increase. That is cash that is already there to pay for these vehicles. To mitigate the amount of cash that we're using, we're talking about debt again for the small vehicles, debt possibly for the big vehicles. There's the cost of the big vehicles is getting a little out of control, and we can keep raising the rates here. As you can see, every individual department is seeing fleet motor pool increases, or we can look to have some debt to mitigate that spiking that happens in the budget, like a large increase. We can mitigate that over time with debt. But I don't want to get too highly leveraged with just vehicles for the city. We have other needs in our utilities like water and gas has some needs that we need to address through debt. So
I had one more, I'm sorry. I think, John, I asked you this last year, but I'm showing on the city manager, it says vehicle commuting allowance, 6,000, it's being increased to 10. Last year you were changing that because Eric was
It
coming
should
on?
not be being increased at all. It
Okay.
hasn't changed. And it was the same thing last year. You
Yeah,
asked the same question.
I did. I
And
asked the
and
same thing.
It should not be increasing. There's no change.
Okay. I was just wondering.
No, you're on target. It should not be different.
Okay. Those are just my questions I want to cover.
Anybody else have any questions?
Did you want to talk about time?
Again, the police, I think it's page 25. We have small tools for 50,000. That's all the description is, small tools.
You're on small tools?
Yes, sir.
That one's in yellow.
So that was actually removed? The small tools was removed and put into operating supplies?
yeah, that's a negative 50,000 that moves up into 67,270, which is just general operating supplies.
But what were small tools when it did exist?
Small tools, and if you go into some of the other ones, it has like our Could be flashlights, pins, things like that, evidence supplies, daily operating items, things like that.
Still another on 26, police professional services, 385,000. Expenses covered by grants. That's where the opioid is. That's another yellow one. Professional services, supplies.
So this is a unique department. How this works is if there's a grant that comes in, we have the budget capacity to spend that grant by having this Department 146. If no money comes in, he doesn't spend anything out of this. So everything that he has here has to have a revenue source outside of general tax dollars to pay for it. So what we had in the past was a $385,000 supply budget, which was just a generic budget that we gave because we didn't know what he was going to get as a grant throughout the year. What we've done is define that a little bit better this year and done operating supplies. And this is where we put the capacity of opioid money that we have available from the county. We put that in that one line, and then everything else is in this command vehicle and trailer that he might purchase for $225,000. Again, no guarantee. If he doesn't get that grant, we don't move forward with that purchase of that vehicle.
Does the
Same thing with the opioid money we already have. He just really has to define what he wants to do with his opioid money.
And
So,
yeah, the opioid, and he's probably going to get some more.
yeah, I think what did I tell you, 250 once upon a
And
time?
is this where the 86,000 is going to fall from the cameras? It's going to end up in here too?
Yes, the flock camera would hit this budget,
For the grant budget,
Yeah.
not the opioid budget, the grant.
No,
the grant budget in
The
general. 'Cause
grant
there is a
budget,
grant
yeah.
that's coming from the county that pays for that.
That's where we're going to see it.
Yes, you'll see all, this activity in this account always has to have a revenue with it. Just, that's the counterpoint to this account.
Yeah.
Is he can't spend any of it unless he has the revenue.
Yeah, you got to account for it to start with. What is our actual court cost?
It's a hard guess because our percentage is changing there. It's because it's based off of court cases. I believe we're 66.2% now going forward for next year. And then they're changing budget at Thatcher. They haven't approved a budget yet. So we get kind of a general plan for them, but we don't get the same budget because we'll probably pass our budget before they pass theirs. So we kind of have to guess. This guesstimate's a little bit closer to what we think it is. But if you look at our expenditures, which we'll be reducing or producing for you on May 12th, Councilmember Flores, has asked that we produce a budget to actual for you guys. And so we have one at your May 12th. You'll notice that we don't even spend the percentage of the budget that we actually allocate towards the court. So we do a lot of budgeting for them, but we don't spend a lot with them. But technically, we're supposed to be 66.2% of their overall operation of that facility.
Will we have clearer numbers when our IGA is up with them to identify how we're going to work with them?
So the IGA is up in 2026. So 2027 would be a negotiating year. So at that point, we would have a better discussion about coming up with better numbers and the budget and the actuals not really following each other. We budget a lot, but we don't spend a lot.
Okay, and just wondering too, we have 7 phones and 2 copiers and 1 laptop for the court. They're Thatcher employees. They don't supply their own phones?
These are the hardline phones at the building, the actual hardline phones, yeah, not cell phones.
To connect to court and things like that.
Correct. So if it has to have a hardline phone for if you call in for a ticket, it goes into their line. I believe they have hardline phones at each one of the clerk's desks so that they can make outgoing calls from a 928 number that shows from the city. And then, yeah, they have 1 copier over there for the whole building. And what was the other thing that you pointed out on that? What else do they have at the court, Sam?
Laptop and a tablet.
A tablet. They have a tablet that the judge uses, right, for court cases. But yeah, we're responsible for all of the capital fixtures, I guess, at the building, because it is our building. Guess we don't need you, Sam. You solved it. The sound system will be an item that Thatcher is currently procuring. That could come out of that percentage of cost. So the budget this year could be a little bit closer to actual because they're planning on doing a upgrade to the current configuration to meet some mandate from the state courts that it has to be able to have a remote session. Whenever you get a ticket, you have to be able to remotely be represented, I guess, if my understanding. Like Thatcher's running that, it's their procurement, it's their, it's our specs that our IT department, Sam Napier, put together, but it's ultimately they're putting it out for bid through their procurement process, and they'll be billing it through their monthly billing process that they give the city, so.
All I have right now. I guess I'm glad I was part of asking for this type of format to talk the budget line for line, but I was hoping it was just going to be budget. We always end up with more on the agenda that makes our night longer, and I don't feel we get through it all the way even tonight. And I don't know that the one-on-ones that we had really achieved what maybe was being sought, because I mean, even, I want to call her Alma too.
Go ahead. It's work
Counselor,
session.
Councilwoman Flores, finding out about sanitation. I believe she said she found it out on the one-on-ones and not
No,
necessarily in the.
She did her own research.
I did my own research,
Dug
but
it out.
you have to remember, I did budgets for the city for 7 years, so
Yeah.
I know where to look for things like that, so.
I'm glad you brought it out.
Yeah,
And piggybacking off that a little bit, Mr. Lopez, how do we flip our order from what the agenda says? When and why did we, and we have before, decide to go executive session first?
Because our attorney's on the East Coast, so I wanted to get her in there
Right.
early.
And I'm sure there's different reasons for other times that we've done it.
Usually it's either attorneys or there may be an agenda item that we want to act on, so I try to do the executive session in the beginning, but usually we try to do them at the end if we can, but mostly it's driven by attorney availability, really.
Right.
And in past years, we kind of went to the non-council meeting Mondays because we realized that these get a little long in the tooth, and of course, people get tired and so on. And this year, the feedback I got was the extra nights could be a lot too, so I tried to combine them. But we really have pretty busy agendas too, so we end up with 2 meetings in one, basically. So we can go back next year and go to non-council meeting Mondays again to make budget a unique item. All we'll talk about is budget. If we want to do that, we can certainly do that.
Well, it seemed to something. I mean, it didn't work for me altogether. We've had a lot of budget ones. We've had a lot of questions which I enjoyed, of course. But we do keep everybody here till 10 o'clock.
Well, and that's the obvious point is, I
That's
realize
what
we
I'm
have to work around a East Coast lawyer as well, but I'd rather burden staff less if possible over somebody
with
we're
that.
paying pretty steep hourly rates to, and again, depending on how long we're going to be in, we could have done this the other way around and the lawyer wouldn't have been, I don't think, overburdened.
I don't know if this is the time to ask it, but I thought that last meeting we were going to talk about the fire chief's pay and make a final decision or something on what we wanted to pay him. Or bullet point like the other department heads are. Has that, where are we at on that?
we haven't reflected it in this budget. So first thing, I think, like I pointed out some changes that we're already talking about. The golf course is a budget that's changed. The vehicle replacement fund is a budget that's changed. I think I need to do that one refresher on the fire department. So if you want, I mean, plan going forward. Right now, we say the tentative budget we're saving for June 9th. We could use the May 12th meeting to go through those changes that I talked about tonight, or we could wait till June 9th and just do, there's a lot of items on the budget that we're going to bring out as separate, whether or not we, the raises in the water department that will be an item and not there. So we're breaking out all of these individual items so that we can come to a tentative budget conclusion of what the tentative budget should and should not have in it going forward. And again, there is always the final budget that we have till the end of June that you can pass for as long as it's less than the tentative budget. You can do changes on the final budget too. So we have a lot of time. If there's still, I want you guys to feel comfortable going forward that I think where we came at it from the budget is this page right here. Overall in the general fund, it only changed 6%. So we were saying, well, the inflation was 2.5%. So most of it was just inflationary increases and payroll increases. So with that in mind, we tried to simplify the process and say, if that's all that's really changed, what do we need to discuss in the budget? So we brought you the large departments that had major changes. That's the highlighted areas here. And we tried to focus on that, but it sounds like you guys wanted to get into detail, which we've done tonight. Do we need to have more of these sessions to feel comfortable? There's a lot of things that need to happen to pass the budget, but I mean, I want to make sure that we're comfortable that you know what's in the budget, you know what it is we're funding, you know what we're supporting and going forward. But there's a rate study that needs to happen that you're gonna have a presentation on May 27th, the day after Memorial Day. That's a very important meeting to hear for the very first time what utility rates could be reflected. Again, the budget's not driving that except for sanitation might be benefited by that conversation. But our budgets right now, if you passed it right now, you wouldn't have, the rate increase has nothing to do with that. We base the budget on prior year operations. The prior year revenues could cover your current budgets and all your funds except for sanitation. So, but again, that conversation about the rate study is a long-term 5-year view of what the rates need to look like. So that conversation will happen on May 27th. We're trying to keep that meeting to just rate study. So that's a big meeting. There's a lot to talk about. Do you have 6 funds?
That's
5
the
funds?
only thing on that meeting.
Yeah. So
So to your question, the fire chief, I think we would want to, we're in a different era now that we've transitioned to the new fire chief. And I think the base salary was 35, and then there was some call-out pay that historically had been used. And I remember there was a discussion about adding that to the 35. We did do away with the stipend for the vehicle. And so are we looking at about 38,000? Is that the number that we're gonna?
I don't know what that number is. I mean, I know we started with some pension board meetings and then that got discussed in one group and then it got moved to another group and then it came here for a short discussion and I thought, I don't even remember where we were and I think we need to tie that down before.
So I know we had
before-
35, I think, as a base salary.
I told you that if I made the motion, it was gonna be 36 plus call-out pay and that all put into his, what is it, 407B?
457B.
457B. And him be eligible for the cost of living
the COLA, as every other
the
employee.
following year, but not the merit and not this year. And then there was one other thing that I wanted in there, but I just wondered if we had tied that down or if I was thinking that was something that needed to be said here.
It
or
is.
in
We
a-
haven't
in
even
the
put it in
part
the
of a
budget.
motion, but I just don't want it to go so long that we forget what all we discussed.
So we can bring that back on the May 12th. I mean, that gives me about 2 days to put together an item and have you something to vote on. But some guidance on that would be helpful. I don't know where we landed in executive session, but it sounds like 36,457 with this. That's a 7% match of the 457, right? You know, they can
Yeah.
contribute up to 7% of their, and then a match up to, the city will match up to 7%
Up to
of whatever they
7%.
contribute,
Yes.
dollar for dollar. And then
And then the call-out one, which we got to dig into more. I know we want to add call-out. Obviously, call-out will vary year to year.
Right.
So we're going to have to see, is that something we want to do actual call-out, or do we want something that
I
represents?
think it needs to be actual call out.
All right, and when,
That
again,
that has a lot of effect on the morale of the guys that are working under him,
and the question is, can we do that? Is it tied to the
not
LoSAP?
tied to the LoSAP.
And I thought it
You
was.
you
Let us
can pay
check.
him whatever you want to pay him. It just can't go into the LoSAP. It has to go into the.
so we'd have to
57.
create a new pay code that doesn't exist, which is a contribution, a call-out pay that does not make a 7% contribution to LoSAP. And that's what I got to run by our
So it
attorney.
would be some kind
Neither
of,
does the first 36,000 anyway.
yeah, it would be some kind of representation of if you got call out. It wouldn't literally be call out.
Yeah, it'd be easier if we
Why
just
not?
set a salary based on, but you want the call out because at 2 o'clock in the morning when you get called out, you want to know that they showed up to that call.
I think it makes sense for their percentage to show up right beside the other guys.
Okay, well, let me talk to the attorney, because,
Oh,
yeah, there's a stipulation, because currently, you know, when you do your call-out pay, 7% of every call-out goes towards LoSAP, and that's a
But that's
automatic
only
pay
because
code.
you doing that.
That correct. So if,
You
can we
just don't.
separate that and make that, he still won't contribute to LoSAP, he'll just
Right,
get that call-out pay in total.
right. And
So let
you-
me find out.
That one can go toward his 457B if he wants to.
And so the value now is, originally working with the pension board, we were going through a whole changeover, which actually started with Councilwoman Flores leading the charge at the time, finding an attorney, which was a challenge. So we went through that whole process with the pension board because the current configuration would no longer work, but had to be grandfathered in. So this is a good discussion to have, because in the future, the fire chief salary and any changes or COLAs or anything would come before council as part of their budget presentation. We'll make that transition.
Right, I don't know why it actually went to the pension board, because they should have had no say over that.
Well, they originally.
Because it had a LoSAP component to it. and-
Yeah.
Yeah, but. once-
But at that point, it loses its attachment, so.
So we'll bring back a configuration. We'll check on the call out and how we handle that. Then we'll have some dollars attached to it, and we can make it part of the process. And then
I just-
that will be the process.
I just want to make sure we knew where we were at before the 11th hour.
Yep.
Yeah, budgetarily, it's a very small change. I think it's under $10,000 in the fire department budget. The fire levy's already passed their budget, so they're unaware of that change. So I think we're a little behind the 8 ball, but maybe we can get in touch with them.
It's a small change.
It's a $5,000 change to their
Should be able
budget.
to do it.
Troy, I apologize if we resolved this at the last meeting, but have we made a final decision on the water?
That's going to be one of those items that we were bringing back on the
We're gonna
tentative
do it
budget.
as a
It'll be
yeah.
an amendment to the tentative
Right,
budget or
okay.
a understanding.
kind of a line item.
Yeah, I think that's the best
Well,
way,
yes,
right?
I
Because
agree.
again, there's differences of opinion. I want the council to make that decision, so we'll break things out and then we'll adopt as amended. That will be one of them.
Right.
I think there was a 1% COLA was on there, signs at the library, the beautification of the golf course front entryway.
And the 1% COLA was not a council request. I just put that there so they could see what it is. So unless you want to have it on there, it won't be on there.
You said that was 60,000 across all funds?
That's what I believe the calculation was, yes.
Yeah. So again, the only reason I put it there is so you could see what 1% was, to know if you wanted to adjust that COLA. But I don't want to put it there to kind of make you have to address it. Unless you want it on there, we won't put it on there.
Well, we matched what COLA was this year, right?
We did.
Okay.
2.5
It was
is the current
2.5,
COLA.
And that's what we
Right.
gave.
But again, understand, you don't always have to match COLA. So let's say the COLA came in at 8%. We're not going to probably give an 8% raise, so then you make the adjustment. So we give you the COLA to make sure we have some metric for you to go on, and then council can adjust it at any level they want. There will be years where the COLA may be too high, and you'll have to bring it down just because you can't afford to give that much of an increase. So the COLA is always what will bring you as a metric, so you have something empirical to base it on. It doesn't have to stay there. You still ultimately can make that decision.
My ignorance for asking, but is this a normal thing that we do to like discuss in the public a department head's salary?
We're not discussing individual salaries, we're discussing the overall compensation plan for the city.
Okay. Well, I meant for like fire chief.
Well, it is under the circumstances because his is more of a stipend, which has not ever really had a set amount. Once we get that amount set and we have the new configuration, then it will be part of the ongoing discussion with the rest of the budget. So we've already had a discussion behind closed doors. We know what the configuration roughly will be. You're going to have to set something because it's new.
I just didn't know if we were going to have to discuss.
And the
every one of them.
compensation plan doesn't really pick up his position. He's
It's
one of 2
atypical.
part-time fire chiefs in the state.
Yeah. So it's somewhat unusual, but it's because it's an unusual configuration.
Anybody else?
And then $100,000 for Lance's budget for additional facility maintenance in 2026 was the last item that we're going to put on there.
Yes, I'm sorry. That was one of my questions. I mean, he gave kind of some examples of, you know, I could and I might but we never really nailed anything down. I feel like we're putting 100,000 out there for coulds, mights, and maybes. Have you guys narrowed that down any? Do you
I didn't
have,
think it was enough.
well, but I'm just wondering, like, what is it going
Yeah.
towards?
Well, if we do some of those things I brought to you, we'll probably bring those back to you. Some of the major stuff, we even looked at our assessment for like the pool. One of the things we're looking at, I got Mike Cook looking at pricing new lighting throughout the entire pool, which is going to be pretty expensive. Additional bleachers and shade structures, obviously going to be capital, big item projects. Those are some of the big ticket items. We haven't assessed everything as far as completed all of our assessment. Then we're going to prioritize, and then we'll kind of divvy it up into a 5-year plan, and then we'll kind of know what we want to do next year versus the next year. Right now, we currently have in our budget, City Hall, the customer service area upgrade, a couple things at the Public Works office. We might add a few more things to it, but I think next year's kind of set. If we get a big ticket item where we can contract it out, that's where we'll use that money and say, all right, we're going to hire a company to come and replace all the lights at the pool or you know, add a shade structure or something like that. It'd be a bid project type thing.
Does the roof for the Legion come from you?
The Legion roof, they're taking care of that themselves as part of their lease.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the items we're looking at the Legion, though, we did walk around a sidewalk. There's a sidewalk on the north side that's not even 3 feet wide and it's all falling apart. We're gonna do that. It's outside the actual building lease. We'll have that either bid out or Streets will do that as part of a maintenance project. And the ramp out on 11th Street, somebody just added some concrete there. So there's some concrete work there that we're gonna do and some lighting outside that building. It's on our list. So that's some more items that are part of that $100,000.
But you couldn't do that unless you have the 100,000.
Yeah.
Well, I
Right, so
think when we were talking about building maintenance, we were just wanting to make sure that the roofs weren't falling down around our ears. Not saying not to do what you're doing, but I think what we were looking for is more, are we going in and, you know, making sure the carpet, you're not tripping over it? Are the floors being taken care of? Are the bathroom doors not falling off in the library? I think that's what we were getting at towards the building
we
maintenance.
began, and we do every Monday, and they did it today. We have scheduled between 10 and noon, we're going through all the buildings. So we're literally doing walkthroughs. Public Works Director, Finance Director, I've been there, and then, of course, the department head. And so what we're doing is we're identifying all these needs. There's just no way to compile all that as we're going through it now. So the plan is that Mr. Henry is actually going to be working on a plan over 5 years. Now, these are life cycle maintenance, kind of maintenance issues, not capital. The capital will always show up in the capital improvement program, but there's just no way for us to be able to do what we're doing now, digest it all and put it all in there. So the 100,000 is kind of a holding place so that we can begin to approach those things that are most critical.
Okay.
And the lighting at the pool might be one of those things, but they'll look at the universe that we compile, prioritize, and then we'll start working through it. But there's no way for us to be able to today, or even within this budget, at this time, tell you exactly how it's going to play out. We got to build a plan, and that plan will be brought to you. But we'll definitely be able to find some things to spend the $100,000 dollars
And
on.
those-
And in our
Yeah.
visits, nothing's health and safety. I think that's what you were kind of getting at. There's no health and safety risk right now.
Okay.
These are more aesthetics and things that there's definitely a need, like Councilmember Lopez has pointed out, that's probably greater than $100,000 each year that we haven't included in the budget. This would just be a stepping stone for Lance to start taking those steps in 2026 to start addressing the stuff that he sees as the most critical, but not safety or dangerous.
Okay.
So,
That's, yeah.
does that help
Yes,
explain?
thank you.
Any? So is there more information we need? Do we feel confident coming into June 9th for the tentative budget? June 5th, we'll be having our truth and taxation. We plan on keeping the tax rate the exact same, which will earn us an extra, I think, $14,000. But we'll go through a truth and taxation to keep that rate the same. And that's part of the budget. And then on June 9th, we'd be introducing that budget for the first time. That is this budget with those few caveats that I brought out tonight, where you could be able to individually vote on those. And again, if we couldn't make a decision on June 9th, we can kick the can for one more meeting And on the final budget, you can make some of the decisions. So I just want you to feel confident that you're getting your voice heard and that we're doing the right thing that the council wants for the city, not just the management of the city.
I'm ready, Troy.
To pass it right now?
I'm ready.
Okay. They were not ready for you.
I'd like to ask a question while I have you all here. Is it May 27th that is the work session? Is that the day after Memorial Day, 27th? Will all of the council present tonight be able to make that 27th meeting?
I will.
Tuesday,
Huh?
yeah, so far I am.
Okay, because this is our first meeting on utilities. It's a big meeting. It's a critical meeting. And so I just want to make sure, since I have you all in the room, to see if so everyone here tonight will be able to make that meeting.
Not the last chance. I guess that'll be a
Councilman
June
McGoy,
meeting.
will you be able to make that meeting?
May I be excused from fire meeting, sir? Yes, I'll be there.
Thank you. So, thank you. I appreciate that.
But there'll be another meeting in June with rate studies. So don't feel like you're pressured into, we're making decisions that night. It's just
Okay,
first presentation.
I think you can move on now.
Move on. Okay, good. All right, so we have no more presentations for the budget. This is, we've answered line item details, we've answered questions. Again, any questions that come up, we're more than happy to take on an individual case-by-case basis and answer those. So you have till June 9th to think of all those questions, ask your constituents, what do they think? We're getting closer to that budget for 2026, so.
And I do not plan on putting 1% COLA as an ad unless I get direction right now otherwise. Do you want that on there as an option? Because I won't put it on there.
I want to ask a question about that. I just read something about the Western Urban, is that what we use?
Yes.
And they made a statement that had gone up 23% in the last 5 years.
It's
That's quite
possible. There was an
possible.
8% increase like a few years ago.
And in those same 5 years, how much have we gone up?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's nowhere close to that. I mean, we just started doing.
This
you
is
know,
only the
This is
second year
second year,
we've
yeah.
done COLA.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just,
So
Yeah.
you know what? We'll
maybe
put it on
maybe
there.
we're not doing enough.
Yeah, we'll put it on there, and we can have a discussion.
Let's at least have it an option if there's
Okay, so
enough
we'll
money
keep it
to
on the
look
list.
at.
then.
Just 1%? Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, the 1% is simply a marker. Now, remember, when we kept the revenues down really low, right? So we had about 60,000, I don't know with the adjustments, of ongoing revenue available, which would have basically matched the 1%. If we go beyond that, especially on an ongoing cost, we probably will have to adjust the revenue. Now, again, I say that knowing that we budgeted extraordinarily low on the revenue. In fact, it's this year's budgeted revenue, which is unheard of to do 2 years in a row. But be aware that if we go beyond that 1% on ongoing, and some of the other stuff like signage, we would literally, in order to not have that increase, plus we got the question on the salary with the fire chief, which is a minor change, but you might do some of those other projects out of reserves and literally use reserves to do those. But again, if you want to bump the COLA, the 1% will cover the first step of that COLA. After that, you'd have to nudge that revenue estimate up a little bit, which is negligible, but I do want you to understand that.
So you threw a couple dates at us. You said May 12th, May 27th, and June 9th. So you said May 12th, we could talk about these extra things? Did you just
If you
bounce
wanted
that
to,
June?
it sounds like it'd be better to wait till June 9th when we're actually voting on the tentative budget. But keep any more budget presentations for the month of May are done with this meeting tonight? Or do you want to talk more with the budget? I don't know what else we can talk about. We've gone through the highlights, we've gone through the lowlights, and we've gone through the line items.
I'm ready,
So-
Troy.
I think I'm good
Mayor,
with
can you make a call?
individual. I'm good with individual if I have any more questions.
Okay, yeah, and again, if you have questions, reach out to us, reach out to my office, not Matt, and reach out to me, just kidding. And I will answer your questions.
Are you ready, Brad?
I'm ready.
All right, so June 9th, we'll plan on a tentative budget after your truth and taxation meeting on June 5th.
Nothing changed, huh, B, on the last one you put out? Good?
Sure, thank you there.
Okay, thank you guys.
We'll move on to item number 4, announcement of current current events. Anybody have any? Nope. And item number 5, request for future agenda items. Oh,
Mayor, move that we adjourn.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? We're adjourned.
Thank you, Alma.
Thank you.
They didn't want to wait till now.
Even if we didn't agree on something tonight, I still think so.
Yeah, you know when our council. No, you were. Yeah. Because then they could have went home
Thank you.
Progressive.
early. You weren't there last time we had two, and she was only on for like 5 minutes.
I might see it too. It's usually something that I see on the social media, like say they're gonna hire or something. Or even, I think you've used it even.
Yeah.
It's part of, it's already been